You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hey Andrew, are you there?
Yes. How's it
Oh,
going?
hey man, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Keith?
I'm doing good. I just woke up. You ever have one of those days where like you just sleep all day and then you don't realize it's Friday? Like I slept all day yesterday
Yes.
and then I was like, oh shit, it's Friday. Oh, like,
Absolutely.
well, it's good to have you. For the folks at home, this is uh I guess you're now officially an author, right? Because you have a book coming out.
I am now an author. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes. November 1st.
yeah. And the great Andrew Buss, who has his first book called Top Five: How High Fidelity Found Its Rhythm and Became a Cult Movie Classic, which
Absolutely.
you've been working really hard on. Like, so tell me the process. Like, why did you want to start writing this book? Because I'm a huge Cusack fan, and I
Absolutely.
wanted to know your thought process on writing High Fidelity.
Absolutely. So it started, I did an oral history of High Fidelity 3 years ago for Consequence of Sound. I interviewed Cusack, Jack Black, Stephen Frears, a bunch of people involved, Todd Luizo, the screenwriters. And it was such a fun process working on that oral history. I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to kind of turn it into a book. So that started last year. I got the deal with Applause Books, and then we wound up. I worked on it kind of all of last year up until December, and now I get to enjoy it coming out.
Now, did you read the book first before you saw the movie, or how did?
So yeah, I went backwards. I saw the movie, and then I went and discovered the book.
Okay.
Yeah, I love. How did you stumble upon it?
High Fidelity?
Yeah,
Well, for the folks at home, everyone knows I'm a huge Cusack fan,
of course.
but High Fidelity wouldn't be in my top 10 Cusack films. So it's a movie I've seen two or three times, but
No worries.
it's just a movie to me. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. And that's the thing. There's definitely, and that's the kind of thing with someone's career. I'm sure there's multiple movies that are in your top five that wouldn't necessarily be in my kind of.
I think I'm losing you. Are you there? Andrew, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I can
okay.
hear you.
Okay. So last thing I got was the top five, and then
Right. I'm sure your top five would be different than mine as far as Cusack's kind of filmography would go. Right.
yeah,
That's just because it's.
yeah. But you gotta keep in mind too. Also, I'm not a real judge. I'm just a stand-up comic.
Right.
Like I like,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean. So I'm not saying it's. I'm just saying for my taste. But so you saw the movie, then you read the book. Now I haven't read the book in a long time, but I know it was written by Nick Hornby, who also
Hmm.
wrote About a Boy, which the humor is very different than the movies on that. So I wanted to know your process on which one, like which one did you enjoy reading?
As far as enjoy reading, well, I definitely did enjoy About a Boy, but High Fidelity is one that spoke to me. The reason might be it also might be because of kind of my upbringing. Um, Media was a big part of my upbringing, and that's a lot of what High Fidelity is. The book is not just music; it's music and movies and pop culture.
Yeah,
So I could see myself more kind of in that character, Rob. Not entirely. I mean, Rob is an asshole, but I'd like to think that I'm not. I mean, someone might say different, but I don't think I am. And but it's just one of those things with that character that really struck me. And then all of Horn's Hornby's book, his work though, is incredible.
Yeah.
Like Fever Pitch, like he's done so much great stuff. He just came out with a book this past year that found parallels between Charles Dickens and Prince.
Definitely.
Like
The thing about Nick Hornby is like I think he doesn't know he's funny. You know what I mean?
right. Oh yeah. And
So
he's a trip. He really is. He's so great to get to talk to. He just just the very dry humor. And I mean, like immediately he said yes to the oral history and the book. He was the first person I went to
oh
for the
my God.
oral history, and I email him, or I email his person who sent it to him, and within 5 minutes, I get an email from Nick that just says, "I'm here, Nick Hornby." That's all it
Oh,
said, was "I'm here," and I'm like, "Okay, great. Well, as long as you're here, let's." So,
let's do it. Now, I
yeah.
wanted to ask you because before you started writing this book, you also did a lot of like written interview articles with like enormous celebrities and stuff. And like you and I, we've talked about, your process on who you choose to interview and stuff. But I wanted to know again for the folks at home who don't really know, like say they want to be someone, who interviews people, like what's the first step they would process to go to? Like what was your thing that say, okay, here's how I want to interview Joe Coy or Kevin Smith. Like, how do you
Right.
do that? But
Well, how I get there is because I was writing for a couple different places, and then finally the Laugh Button. And I hadn't done a ton of interviews at that point when I started with the Laugh Button in 2016. And then I just gradually started reaching out to publicists and starting to get interviews. One of the first big ones was I did a piece on the kids of comedians and the siblings of comedians. And Kelly Carlin was one of the first big ones I did for that. And then from there, I'm like, I want to keep doing interviews. So I knew to kind of start out attainable. Like I knew someone like Gilbert Gottfried was attainable, but his name was recognizable that I could get to the next person. Then
right,
and then I build up this little kind of niche, and I can keep getting bigger and bigger names as comedians. Publicists know me, and then when a comedian has a special that needs to be promoted, like Tom Segura or Pete Holmes had Crashing, that's how I would build up my roster, because when people need to promote stuff, they would come to the Laugh Button. It would be a 15-minute interview, but then they're part of my resume that I
right.
would send to publicists. So I would have a really impressive resume because I would be kind of on the press circuit.
No, definitely. And like that's the same thing like with me, where like they'd be like, okay, well, so and so did Raise a Riff, so then, maybe
Yes,
they should do it. But then there's times where like I'd interview somebody and they'd have like their people in, and like it makes me feel like, okay, I can't fuck up on this one, because then if I fuck up on this one, I'm gonna fuck up on future clients for them. You know what I mean?
absolutely. And you've had an impressive, especially like the last month, you've had some really great guests with, Christy Swanson and Rosie O'Donnell. So you've been getting some really great names lately.
Yeah, well, I stalked Christy Swanson for 8 years. So, like that was one of those things where like
Like you said, she lifted the
what
restraining order.
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But see, like here's the thing where like people don't realize about me is I'm very persuasive, and like if someone tells me they're going to do something and then like they kind of forget, I'm still going to hold on to that word, because I feel in the end
Yeah,
a person's word is all that really matters to their name. So like, if I say I'm going to do something and say I forget about it, I would want people to keep harassing me until I do it, because I don't want to be a hypocrite or a liar. You know what I mean?
absolutely. I mean, the same thing kind of happened, not so much on the scale of your experience with Christy Swanson, but the same thing happened with Kevin Smith, which is I did an interview with him and I pitched on during the interview, which I never do. I pitched the next thing I wanted to do, which was a Clerks cartoon oral history. And he said, "Oh my God, I'm in." Yes, of course. And
Oh my
then
God.
that came around. And then the next year I was doing it. And then I kind of got a little bit of, oh, he's going to wait out COVID. But I'm like, well, okay, but he said he'd do it. So I was just kind of patiently like waiting, like, okay. And then he did it. He loved it. And now I can talk about this since Kevin talked about it with me like a month ago. He announced it, I guess, so I can talk about it. I'm now turning that oral history into a book, all
Oh,
because of that persuasiveness with Kevin, where not persuasiveness, but kind of the persistence of like, okay, I really want to do this thing. And Kevin has been nothing but kind and lovely over the years. And so he's really been a huge kind of supporter of mine. Wrote a quote for the back of my High Fidelity book. Like, I mean, so he has been such a kind of big source in my professional life. And it's just amazing. And it's all because I had an idea and I just was committed to making sure it came to fruition.
yeah, and that's another thing. Like there has to be something about you because there with no, and this is actually a compliment because Kevin
Thank you.
Smith is a huge, huge name, and you guys are buddies. You know what I mean? So like, there has to be something that he really likes about you that he believes in that he does this for you. And I know what that's like with someone else, but like I also know
Right.
that a lot of people don't get to experience that gift that people give us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, you had something, very similar with Norm, of course. I
Yeah,
mean, that just, it's because, Kevin was a hero of mine. I'm assuming Norm was a big hero of yours before you ever knew him.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
And he was a hero of mine. And I'm so sad that he's not with us and that I never got to speak with him. So
did we know each other when I knew Norm? Or
I, we didn't really know. We were Facebook friends. I didn't really talk to you. And there, I remember after he passed, we were talking talking to you about High Fidelity, and I'm like, yeah, I always wanted to, and I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm sorry about Norm. I always wanted to interview him. You're like, well, if you had asked me, I would have done it. And I'm
yeah,
like, son of a bitch.
you should have.
I hate asking, but yeah, I'm
Well, here's the thing, because like a lot of people did ask me for stuff with Norm, and like I always, because I was also his assistant, so like I
right.
always said if it's not good for his career, no, because it's not worth me asking. You know what I mean? But I had like if I have a good vibe with someone, like one thing about you is like I connect with you with Cusack. You know what I mean? So and Norm loved Cusack. So you kind of have that where it's like, okay, we're Cusack brothers. You know what I mean? So like,
Right.
because no one's gonna say, "Oh, I'm a huge John Cusack fan." Like, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those small things where it's like we connect like that. So I totally would have done that. You know what I mean? I would have been like, "Oh yeah." I
Yeah.
remember Norm Saga and I were, because we all had podcasts and we were all joking, who's going to be the first person to interview Cusack? And unfortunately, Norm passed, and then Bob passed, and I guess I'm still left. But if they were still alive, like we were taking bets on who would be the first one, and we had our money on Bob because he was like the bigger name. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I definitely. And yeah, Bob's someone else. I interviewed one, and it was a conversation. It wasn't an interview. It was a conversation. He's like, how are you doing? How's your family? Are they okay? Like, it literally immediately, he didn't know me, and we just had a lovely conversation. And then he's like, when I'm in Chicago, where I was living at the time, I was living in the suburbs actually. He's like, next time I'm in the area, he's like, come out to the show, we'll hang backstage.
Oh
So
my
that
God.
in October of 21, he was going to be in Milwaukee, and I'm like, close enough. So I made the drive to Milwaukee to see him. He kept his word. I saw him backstage. He got me tickets. Like, it was such a great moment, and we had a few minutes to chit chat, and it was great. And then 2.5 months later, he's gone.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm so hey, he was so nice to me and so lovely, and just like I couldn't ask for kind of a better full circle moment than getting to see him one last time in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Saga was awesome when Norm passed, and they passed within 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when Norm passed, Saget called and texted me once a week, just to
Wow.
see how I'm doing and stuff. And like I worked with Saget a little, just like when he was in Ontario and Oxnard, but he's like, oh yeah, when because Mike Young, his original opener, was filming a movie. So like
Yeah.
that's how I got that. I don't think it had anything to do with Norm passing and him feeling bad for me. I just felt like an opportunity was there.
Yeah.
And Saget, he was just so nice. And then when Saget passed, I was just like, really? Like, because I was getting really close with him, I was just like, it just like really just bummed me out where it's like I went through a huge dark depression because it was like I'm losing all my friends, the people I actually love. And it made me feel
Yeah.
the loss of comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's like maybe I don't want to do comedy anymore. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I mean, last year was such a bad year for losing comedians. Like we were losing them left and right, and it's just I can only imagine,
Yeah.
being so close.
And then like I'm not the type of person who says because like I read Matthew Perry's book
Yeah.
and he was talking about how he lost a whole bunch of friends and he doesn't understand why Keanu Reeves is still with us. And I thought like in the moment of losing people, like I could understand like why couldn't it be someone else, but then reading it, it's like that's such a cruel thing to
That's
say.
a shitty thing. Yeah, that's
You know what I
horrible to
mean?
say.
But like I understand his thought process, but I think he didn't.
You don't say it.
Yeah, you don't say it. And I was just blown away that he chose Keanu Reeves. You know what I mean? Like Keanu Reeves is great. And
Maybe there's history with him and Keanu. Who knows? But you still don't say that shit.
yeah. So yeah, man. And then I wanted to ask you, so Jack Black is also a big supporter of you because you've interviewed him more than once, right? You did the
Yeah, Jack's been amazing. I so the first time I interviewed him was thanks to Todd Luiza because I was doing the oral history of High Fidelity, and Jack's people are like, he's really busy. I don't think we're gonna make it work. And I'm like, okay, fine. But I had a gut feeling he'd still do it somehow, and I was right because Todd Luiza called me for his interview, and Todd decided to ambush me and surprise me and not tell me that Jack was with him.
yeah.
So all of a sudden I get on the phone and Todd's like, by the way, I got Jack with us. And I'm like, what? Like all of a sudden I now have to, as an interviewer, have you ever been in that moment where you've had to, where you have a surprise interview? It is the worst, not the worst thing. It's an amazing thing, but it's really difficult because you have to all of a sudden think of questions for a new person. And
Right.
it's
That's never
crazy.
happened to me. I've always wanted it to, but it's
Yeah.
never it's like whenever I interview someone, I'm thinking, okay, maybe Cusack's on the other end. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
I
but
think it's an interviewer's dream. It really that this could happen, and it never happens, and it happened to me once.
yeah. And
Like
then he
yeah,
liked you enough to stay
do
in
it again.
contact and do this.
Yeah, he did it again with the book. And what's funny is we do an interview, and it was an amazing interview, and he's such a great guy because the end of it, he said, when the book comes out, tell my people where I can buy it. And I'm like, Jack, I'm going to send you a copy. And he just says, I appreciate that, but I like to support the arts. So he's
Yeah.
like, let me buy it for you. And I'm like, sure, like, of course. So then I ended the interview by asking. At one point, I did this and it's in the book, but I kind of stopped because it got too difficult putting people on the spot, which is asking them their top 5 albums because it's part of the movie and it just threw everybody off.
Yeah.
So with Jack, I asked him, spent 10 minutes trying to think of it, and then a week later, I get an email that says Jack wants to call you, and I'm like, okay. So he calls me and he's like, I think I've nailed my top 5. And I'm like, have you been thinking about this for a week? He said, yes, but I think I've got it. Okay, this is what I've got. And I was so touched that he thought about it all week and wanted to make sure it was right and want to make sure it was authentic.
Yeah.
It was, nobody does that. It was so cool.
Do you think top 5? I mean, I know that's how like the movie and the book is based, but do you think top 5 is maybe a little too much? Like, do you think maybe top 3 would be a better, or do
Yeah,
you
I
think?
mean, the idea of it definitely is arbitrary because it's like someone's top five, like you said, like, you know, High Fidelity's not in your top five or even top 10 for Cusack films. So I think it's the idea of it is, you know, I mean, I like the idea, which is kind of narrowing down what you like and what you don't like, but at the same time, you know, it really, like, you know, what I like today might be different tomorrow. So it's really
Exactly.
tough to kind of have a list like a top five or even the top three or something. So
Yeah.
that's the irony of kind of the book is when people ask me my top five, it could change. I would have to sit here and just really like kill myself trying to think of it.
Now, how long did it take you to write the book? Because I know you were doing drafts and stuff, because I'm trying to write a book. I've been writing a book for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, and I'm only on 2 pages. So, like, I'm fascinated that you actually got it done, because that itself, regardless selling it or not, but getting it done, that's
Yes.
the main, you know what I mean? That's the main
I
thing.
I would never finish. I don't think I would have finished it if I didn't have a deadline and a publisher telling me I had to finish it.
Right.
I'm one of those guys. I would still have 2 pages as well. Like, I mean, I really just I love the idea of doing the book and I love the interviews, but then sitting down to write it is the toughest part for me because it takes the most energy. And, you know, I mean, it took me like 6, 7 months. No, I really started in March, finished by
Of this
December.
year?
No, last year.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, holy Lord.
Last year. Yeah. So I guess 8, 10 months. Yeah. So I guess like 8, 10 months, something like that. Yeah. I mean, you know, I spent Thanksgiving working on my book, shutting my laptop, going to go eat with my family, then sitting back in the chair and finishing the book. So it was a lot of that. Like I just had to keep trying to find time to keep working on the book. And I'm going through it again with multiple things right now. I'm working on the super bad.
You're
Similar.
working on a super bad book?
I am, yeah.
Oh my God. I love Superbad.
It's such a good movie and it's such a good comedy. Like it was like, did you see it in the theater?
I did. I actually saw
Same.
Superbad with my biological father. It was one of the few times that he visited me.
Oh
And
wow.
so it was a real special moment to me. And I remember I was just entering freshman year of high school. And so like I was like a very dark, funny comedy to me because that was my humor. You know what I mean? And then I watch it now and I think, okay, it still holds up because the jokes are so
Yeah.
good and they're so crisp. And the best part about that whole movie is Seth Rogen is only in it for like 10 minutes. And when he's in it, it's like the best scenes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're thinking, oh my God, you know what I mean? So that's what I liked about it because they had all these superstars, but they all had their little, it made Emma Stone, is that her name? Or
Yeah. It's
yeah,
understood. Yeah.
Emma Stone popular. You know what I mean? So like it had like all these good
Yeah.
crisp formulas.
It did. And that's so interesting. One, I didn't know we were the same age. You're 30?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were a little older for some reason. I had such a similar experience. It's crazy. I saw the movie in the theater with my dad and my grandfather, and it was the only time the three of us really bonded. Actually, there was one other time we went to a Cubs game in Tampa, but it was one of 2 times that we bonded the three guys, 3 generations together, and we went to go see Superbad. And packed theater opening night. I was just about to enter high school, and it was very similar to what you were saying. With you have this dark humor, and I've never heard a crowd like that crowd in that theater. Like it was the best audience I've ever seen a comedy with, especially a
Yeah.
commercial release. Like it was just, the walls are shaking. Like it's just it's in my head as one of the greatest kind of movie experiences I've ever had. Is Superbad.
No, definitely. And I've had that same experience that you were just talking about in a theater where like packed
Mm-hmm.
venue and everybody likes every single joke. I've only had that experience and I watch a lot of movies. I've only had that experience 3 times in my entire life that I could remember. Super bad, Bridesmaids, which I can't watch anymore because that was the last film I saw with my grandfather. So I no longer
Oh
think
wow.
I don't think it's funny or like I just think it's sad. You know what I mean? And but when I saw it, I thought it was hilarious. And then the first Hangover, like those were
Yeah,
the three movies that it was just such a magical experience. It was like going to a comedy club and you're seeing a movie. You know?
absolutely. Especially with the Hangover, the kind at the time, like, people look at it a little differently now, but at the time, it was such like there was such just kind of like madness over that movie. It was one of those movies that just caught on everywhere in pop culture. Like it really was insane how it happened. Like
Definitely.
how everyone came together for that. And then Bridesmaids very similar. Um but no, that's so interesting. We had such similar experiences with Superbad, and that's kind of why I wanted to write the book. I wrote the oral history for Vanity Fair, talked to everybody, and it was like, okay, let's go get this book made. My agent's like, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. So we pitched in and went back to Applause Books, and I'm doing Superbad for them.
Oh my God. You got a lot of movie books you're on the
Yeah,
rise. That's
I
pretty awesome.
do. Thank you. Yeah, I'm always working and overworking myself because I want to do as much as possible.
Now, is there any part of you that has ever wanted to try comedy? Because I know you love comedy.
I did actually when I was 16. I did stand up.
Oh, you did?
Um, I did very briefly. I did a lot of comedy, um, kind of in the suburbs of Illinois, and I did only for like a year or two, and I did comedy songs along with it. Like I had a guitar, so that kind of thing. Like
Oh
that was
my
kind
God.
of that was my way in, and I did the keyboard as well. But then I realized I hated lugging a keyboard to venues, so I ditched the keyboard. I'm like, guitar is easier. You don't have to find an outlet. Like you can just kind of you know stand up on stage with the guitar. Like it was so much less effort. And if there's anything about me, it's find as little effort as possible. So um, I that's how I stumbled on the guitar, and I did it for a year, and I just couldn't see myself like doing the same thing over and over again. I couldn't see myself with the rigorous schedule of being a comic, and I couldn't see myself putting in 10,000 hours
Yeah,
for it. I just
I get
couldn't do it.
and that's 10,000 hours just for like one joke. You know what I mean? Because you got
Exactly.
so like if you think about it, it's a lot more than that. But hey, if you have a set recorded somewhere or not, I'd love it if you sent it to me because I would love to watch it, man. Because I think you were probably really good.
I am trying to hide them all.
Ah,
I am because they just don't work. Because what it was a 16-year-old up on stage singing dirty shit.
right.
And it was me trying to be raunchy and edgy, and that kind of stuff just it was edgy and raunchy for the sake of edgy and raunchy, and that stuff just doesn't work anymore. And
Yeah.
it's not just that, but it's also when I look at it, I'm like, I could have done this so much better. So I just there's a reason I gave it up. But I never gave up my respect for other comedians. Being in the clubs, watching other people, like I would see one of the people you might. Do you know who Drew Michael is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the ones that I would go up on open mic nights, and he would be one of the other comics on the bill.
Oh my God.
So I got to see him do some stuff. I got to see him do a great bit at this place in Chicago, which was in an attic, and it was called the Shit House,
Yeah.
or
That's a
Shithole.
great
Sorry, not
name.
Shithole. It was the Shithole. Yes,
Oh, shit. That's even a better name.
yes, it was amazing, and it was this place where you had to call someone to go there. So like the address wasn't listed, so you called a number and they told you where to go, the kind of the street corner, and then someone came to got you and they brought you up. There's art on the wall, and then it was 60 people in the middle of winter, freezing their ass off, but to watch comedy, and it was cool. And I remember Drew went up and did a bit about how he loves his mom and respects his mom so much, and he wanted to find someone, and essentially, he wanted his mom to start dating again, and essentially he wanted to find someone that was like him.
Yeah.
that was good enough for his mom, and he was the only one he could think of that was good enough for his mom. It was a great bit. But yeah, he was one of the ones that I would see kind of, before he kind of got big, and then it's cool to get to see him kind of get big after seeing him on, the same open mic circuit.
That's one of the things I do wish, like I agree with you, if you could go back in time and change some stuff like you were saying about your set
Yeah,
and stuff. I would go back in time and just be nicer to open mic or comics because at the time I had an ego because I was working with Norm and Jay Moore and
of
stuff.
course.
So like I was kind of I wouldn't say I was ever like cruel or mean to people, but I was kind of not giving them the time of day or respect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's haunted me because I'll give you an example. One person who wasn't truly nice to was Ali Wong, and
Oh, wow.
she's a huge name now.
Yeah.
And another one that I wasn't nice to was Taylor Tomlinson, huge name. So like I wish I could go back in time and just be nicer because I feel like that is that's a key. And when you have a little success when you're young and stuff, you don't realize that that will haunt you in the future. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And that's is I would definitely kind of do so much differently, and I would do so many different interviews, and I'm always kicking myself on stuff. Here's one thing I'm kicking on, and I probably am. So this is just a recent thing I'm kicking myself on. Like we all have those kind of regrets. So back in January, or no, I think it was February, March, there was this comedian that I get pitched that was just about to do his first tour, and I was just kind of tired of doing interviews at that point. And
Hmm.
I said, let me check with my editor. I was just exhausted. Like, and this was just this year. This was like 4 or 5. This was like 6, 7 months ago. I'm like, maybe let me talk to my editor. And that's kind of me just saying, I just had no stamina. I couldn't do another interview. I was burned out. Didn't want to do anything. And that comedian was Matt Rife.
Oh my God. Ah.
And then I swear to God, within a week, I start seeing his shit. And then within a month, I start seeing him everywhere. And I look in my emails because I'm like, that name's so familiar. And I look and I got a pitch asking me to interview him.
Yeah. I had a feeling you were going to say him though.
Yeah.
Because uh Matt is actually hilarious and I knew
Yeah,
him and
absolutely.
he's always been nice and I actually tried to get him before he got big. But now he's untouchable. But
Oh, yeah. I'm not even trying at this point. Like I'm like no fucking way. Like I had a window, and here's what's crazy: my window was right as he was getting big. Had I gotten him then, that article would have gotten thousands of views. Like it just like
game
it's
over. Yeah.
crazy to me. It would have been a game changer. It's crazy that I passed on it, and then I had to, of course, tell my boss that I passed on it, and he's just like, "Yeah, it happens." But
I I had someone, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I had someone like I submitted to interview somebody. Uh their people said no, but would you like to interview this other person who's
that
not
was really
really,
fun.
so I was like, and I'm the type of person I don't want, because we talk about being kind and stuff. So I always say yes when people say that because you never
Yeah.
know when it's going to help you or not help you. And the Matt Rife one is a good example as well. So I said, yeah, sure. And then they sent me their product. And I don't want to say their name because I have nothing against them.
Yeah.
I have something against their people. They started calling me the wrong name. And to me, that is just so insulting because on every email,
Yeah.
even on my email address, it says Keith Reza.
Yeah.
So if you're going to call me the wrong name, I don't want to interview any of your clients because you're being, you know what I mean? And
No, absolutely.
so that might bite me in the ass in the future, but it was just like, it's very hard to get Keith and Jake mixed up. You know what I mean? Like those names don't even rhyme. So, So that's how
I mean, they're close to each other, Jay and alphabet, but that's all I got.
yeah, like I can't even come up with a good excuse on your excuse. You know what I mean? Like, so, but
And that stuff happens, and I've called publicists the wrong names before. Sometimes if it's like I'll misspell like Allison or something. I mean that shit happens. It really
that's an
does. But
honest
Keith and
mistake.
Jake, yeah,
Yeah,
Keith and Jake is different. That
yeah,
is very that
that
is very
is,
different.
yeah. So if you're
But
pitching them to Jake, let Jake do it. That's fine. But it just turned me off so much because it's like we've been emailing each other like 4 or 5 times, and you're just so I was just like, you know what? I think I'll pass. No, just but and then I literally said, by the way, my name's Keith. I haven't heard back from them. But it was like, well, but that's why I did it. And I'll tell you who the client was off air, but it had
yeah,
nothing to do with the client. It just had to do with their team. And that's what I'm trying to say is like when people have a team, they should make sure their team has the same views as them. Because if not, like I wouldn't want someone on my team being mean to people. You know what I mean? Like that.
no, absolutely, and that's the thing. And going back to earlier, getting people before they break. I'm curious. I'm sure you've gotten people right before they hit big. I've done it. You mentioned Taylor Tomlinson. I interviewed her in at the Improv in Schaumburg, Illinois,
Yeah.
in the basement of a mall. And I sat at the bar with her for like 30 minutes. Neither of us ordered any drinks or anything, but we just sat there doing an interview. And she was a new headliner, and now next month she's headlining. In a week or so, she's headlining Radio City Musical. Like,
Yeah,
she's
she's
going.
wonderful. She's wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
she's always been wonderful. I just wish I didn't have an ego and I didn't act
Oh yeah.
like I was bigger than what I because now she's jumping waves over me and I'm barely climbing, sandcastles. But I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
Cusack because you interviewed Cusack
Yeah.
and I wanted to know how was that because that's got to be awesome.
Yeah. So Cusack was definitely kind of a white whale for the piece, especially. That was one when I pitched the piece. My editor at the time was like, "All right, you need to get Cusack. How are you gonna get him?" And I didn't know if I could, but I'm like, "All right, let's try." So, and it took a couple of weeks. I got Nick Hornby to do it, and then I got Stephen Frears, and then finally they're like, "Okay, Cusack will do it." And I didn't have him for long at all. I had him for about. Once I spoke to him, we're good, and everything was kind of going really well with the interview for the oral history. I crammed this much into 13 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Doing that interview gave me some great kind of legitimacy for the oral of the book to happen. Because I was able to get Cusack, like, all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh wow, he got everybody for
Yeah.
So I mean that it really legitimized what I was doing for that oral history. So please play along for Consequences Found at the time.
Yeah, Cusack. I mean, you're right. Cusack is very hard to get. I've tried to get him, every single year, and it's so weird because are you still there? Did I lose you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Okay. It's so weird because I've been trying, but I interviewed his sister Anne,
Yeah.
and Anne I like to consider her a good friend, like an actual friend where like we've emailed each other and like we dig each other's vibes. But I'm sure she's aware of my obsession with her brother, but I've never asked her to help me. And like same with like Jill Kimmel, who I'm friends with, I've never asked her to help me with her brother Jimmy because I
You don't want to cross that line. Yeah.
yeah, because it's a person range. I mean, Reza Riffs is probably going to stop when I get John Cusack, and I will get him The only way I won't get him is if he dies. You know what I mean? Like I know in my heart one day I will get him. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I mean, it might just be one of those kind of promotion things. You might have to wait for him for the next project or what. That's the thing I learned about comedians, about celebrities, everybody. It's all about when they're coming out with the project. And at first I'm like, oh, I don't understand it. And then there's something coming out. I'm like, well, I get it. Do it as close as possible to your thing coming out. Like, I understand the promotion machine a lot more now that I'm on the other. I
Yeah.
really get it. So how important and how integral it is. And so I'm sure you'll get them. I absolutely am, because it's one of those where, I mean, just, the more, like, the more names that you get up, the more you build up the resume of this podcast, the more you get people, it only helps.
Oh no, definitely.
It's only down, and I've got people turning down still to this day. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter how many things you've done. Even my mentor, a man named Bill Damey, who just passed away this year, I got emails from him where he was doing a thing for Chicago Magazine, and he was getting turned down by people he wanted to interview.
Yeah.
And Bill Damey was the last man to interview Johnny Carson. He was pen pals with Frank Sinatra. He was Rolling Stone Esquire cover. Like, he would do the interviews for the covers. Johnny Depp, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Madonna, you name it, he did it at that point. Like, Warren Beatty. Like, so watching him get turned down by people, the entire cast of Seinfeld did it with him. So watching him get turned down really showed me it doesn't matter. None of it. You're like, as big as your resume is, there's still opportunities to get more people and to do more things. Like, it's never going to be like you're untouchable.
No, definitely. And like, first of all, before we move on, I want you to know I love you, but I also hate you for interviewing John Cusack. And like, I'm extremely jealous on that. But I didn't think Rosie O'Donnell was gonna say yes. And
Oh,
like, that's probably,
she's fantastic.
yeah, that's probably the biggest name I've ever gotten. And I was just like, oh my God, like that blew me away. And then my last question for you is, um, so when you release this book and you're starting, Superbad and Clerks 3, like, how do you finish a project before you move on to the next project, or do you work multiple projects at a time?
I work. I help it. I can't help saying yes to things, and I can't help wanting to do as much as possible. I can't help exert energy as I can, and I just, there's something about me where it's never enough. This is never going to be enough. I need more, and I'm very lucky in which I don't have an addiction to, like substances or anything like that. Or, I mean, my biggest addiction is, like, I understand, though, addiction to substances or anything, because I have an adrenaline with interviews. It doesn't matter. For Superbad, I interviewed Emma Stone. I interviewed Jonah Hill. I interviewed these people for the oral history. And then I wasn't like, oh my God, I've got it made. I'm like that for an hour, and then the next thing is someone turns me down and I get really upset. Like,
Me too. Oh my
it
God.
doesn't matter. Like, it just, there's something about me that I just have to do more and more, and I'm always going to push myself. And I think that's the only way you can establish any kind of footprint in any industry, is pushing yourself more. And it sucks, but that's just kind of how it is until you get to that sweet spot. And even then, you still want to do more. Like, that's why I'm fascinated with anyone that can walk away. Like, because there's so few people that can just walk away. And I'm fascinated with those people, because I don't think I'll ever have that in me.
Right.
But no, absolutely. I spin plates. I'm also working on another book about comedy and music. So I'm doing interviews for that right now, about
Oh,
kind of how
yeah.
comedy and music intersects. I interviewed Mel Brooks for it, Cheech Marin,
You should get Tommy
Sarah
Chong on that.
Silverman. No, yeah, I do need to get Tommy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on that one. I heard your interview with Tommy. It was great.
Yeah, I could hook you up with Tommy.
Great.
So I actually do have two more questions. I want to respect your
Wait,
time.
no, no, no.
So,
Go ahead.
it's kind of like a baseball average where, like, if you're hitting 26%, you could still be considered great. And that's what people don't get. Where like basketball or football, you need 70% to be considered good. But interviewing, so when I say if I write 100 people, there's probably I'm only going to get two of them to respond yes.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to know, like, what's your percentage, right? Like what's your, if you could
I don't
share.
know. I mean, I've had more people say no than yes.
Okay.
Like it's the nature of the game. Like I have not had more yeses than nos. I have so many things I wanted to do or got close to doing, and I have things that I did, and like a publisher kind of fell out, or not a publisher, a publication fell out. I wrote an oral history of the movie Twister.
Oh my God.
Never saw the light of day because I was told it wasn't sexy enough by the publication because Helen Hunt wouldn't do it, neither would any of the cast.
Bill Paxton want to do it for you?
But I got the director, Jan Devon. I got all the technical aspects. It was a great piece, but I was told it wasn't sexy enough. So
Wow.
I get rejections by so many people, like because that's one of the, and that's part of it.
Yeah. That is so. I think I lost you again. You're, all right.
That's even more like I can't tell you how many times I've turned things around. Um, I mean, it's
That
just it's the
that's so
nature of it.
interesting that Bill Paxton didn't do it, because I
Oh, he
heard.
was already gone. He was gone.
Oh, he was already gone. Okay, so that makes sense. He has an excuse,
He
because
hasn't.
because I heard that he was a guy who always said yes to interviews and stuff because
Oh
he
yeah.
always felt he wasn't famous enough or something like that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard.
I absolutely, I'm sure it is, and there's definitely people like that where it's like, why do you need to do this? Like where they just do so much. A person like that to me was Ed Asner.
Oh yeah,
Ed Asner was in 300, 400 movies.
yeah,
Like I I interviewed him, and then 3 weeks later the interview published, and I swear to God, in the time he had 11 new projects on his IMDb in that 3 weeks.
yeah,
Like this was a man that always worked, and so he said yes to everything. And I interviewed him, and he said yes to the interview. He was someone that always worked. I saw him in a one-man show, like when he wasn't making movies or doing interviews or anything. He was on tour in a one-man show. I saw him in Evanston, Illinois, and I asked him about it. He's like, "Well, hopefully, I make enough money and I don't have to keep doing this." I'm like,
no,
"Okay."
definitely. I mean, he was supposed to do Reza Riffs, and then
Before he
unfortunately,
passed, yeah, because he
unfortunately,
did Bob's podcast right before he passed.
yeah, I think Saget was his last interview. Yeah, he was supposed to do mine, and then like we had a date. We were going, and then he passed, and I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before the date we were supposed to do it. So that, but I've had that experience with Charlie Murphy and Ralphie May, where I
Oh
have
wow.
dates. So it's always a bummer, but that's why, like, I'm kind of like, hey, let's do it ASAP, because you never know. You know what I mean? So like that's how I roll. I don't know. Maybe that's a terrible joke that no one's gonna get, but okay. But where can the folks at home follow and support you, and where can they buy this book?
Everywhere you buy books, Amazon, independent really retailers, like anywhere you can buy the books. It's top five how High Fidelity found its rhythm and became a cult movie classic. And you can find me on Twitter at Andrew L. Buss, Instagram Andrew L. Buss, and yeah, I'm out there. I'm always doing new interviews, new pieces. I've got a couple lined up right now at a Vanity Fair thing right now I'm working on. And yeah, I mean,
All
there's
right.
always going to be new stuff coming out.
Well, when it comes out November 1st, I'm definitely gonna buy a copy for you and
I
support. I support
appreciate
the
that
arts
so
as
much.
well as Jack.
Yeah.
Well, no, he actually does make a good point because, you know,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I posted this a couple weeks ago where I used to give out free tickets, and I wish I didn't, because now when I'm trying to sell tickets, because that's how I make my money is comedy.
Right.
I don't make any money doing for free tickets. So when people say, "Oh, well, we'll support you, but you only support me if it's free," that's not a real support. So I think that when people will buy something that you did, and yeah, you want to be cool and you want to, say, "Oh, you're my buddy, I'll get," but in the end, it's more powerful if someone buys it from you, because then that's like true.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's a true fan and true respect, I feel.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And I'm lucky enough to have people like that in my life, because I fall into the same trap with the book. I'm like, yeah, I'll send you a copy. And they're like, no, let me buy one.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
I'll,
I'm
I'll
like,
de-
you're right. You should buy one, please.
I'll
Buy
definitely
two.
I'll definitely buy one, but I do have a favor to ask you when I buy one. If I send it to you, will you sign
Of
it
course.
for me? Yeah.
One, I will sign anything. I like,
All right.
absolutely.
All right, Andrew. Well, it was good talking to you, buddy, and good to officially meet you. Technically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's been so great. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Well, have a great day, and we'll talk later, my man.
Perfect. Thanks. You too, Keith. Take care.
All right, bye, guys.
All
All
right.
right, guys. That was the interview with Andrew Buzz. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, and we'll see you guys next week.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.